last week, if you remember, we should have 3 presentations, but I'm afraid we only had 1 presentation about the structuralism and semiotics, if you remember. Today, I think we will have reader response, psychoanalytic literary criticism, and one more. Okay. Now, are you ready for your presentation? Please let me know. And Fikri, if you are ready for your presentation about reader response, I can activate your, very good. I'm going to activate your microphone. Now your microphone is open, so you can start your presentation, please. Thank you very much. We are all ears and we listen to you. Thank you. You can start. Fikri, is your microphone working? Because I have activated your microphone.
Good morning, Doctor. Hello, Doctor. Do you hear me?
Yes, Fikri, I hear you very good. Now we are all ears.
Okay.
You can start. Thank you, Fikri.
Yes, thank you, sir. I sent the file to the group, and
Good,
my
yes.
friends can see it through the group.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much.
Yes. Reader response criticism. First, I show the definition of the reader response criticism. Reader response criticism is a school of literary theory that focuses on the reader or audience and their experience of literary work. In contrast to other schools and theories that focus attention primarily on the author or the content and form of the work, it is the role of the reader is essential to the meaning of a text, for only in the reading experience does the literary work come alive. So, reader response theory basically stresses the significant role of a reader in interpreting a text. What is the purpose of reader response criticism? Reader response suggests that the role of the reader is essential to the meaning of a text, for only in the reading experience does the literary work come alive. The purpose of a reading response is examining, explaining, and defending your personal reaction to a text and to emphasize the importance of the reader's relationship to the text. The second question, it is, what is the basic idea of the reader response theory? Reader response theorists share two beliefs. Number one, that the role of the reader cannot be omitted from our understanding of literature. And the second, that the readers don't passively consume the meaning presented to them by an object objective literary text. Rather, they actively make the meaning they find in literature. There are five typical questions that I answered through reading this subject. Number one, how does the interaction of text and reader create meaning? The first answer is the readers criticize the text, and when they read and analyze this kind of literary piece, they might have an interaction between the reader and the text, so that another meaning was created. The text contains its own meaning and all necessary information to discover its meaning. Or we can't answer in another answering in other words, the interaction of text and the reader create meaning are done by analyzing the own meaning of the text. When a reader reads it, the reader come into his or her mind the literal meaning of the text and then was able to understand the text or phrases. The second question is, what does a phrase-by-phrase analysis of short literary text or a key portion of a longer text tell us about the reading experience pre-structured by built into that text? The first answer is examining a short literary text, phrase-by-phrase analysis of a short literary text or a key portion of a longer text. Tell us about the reading experience is what the content of that text or built into that text. Or we could answer in other words, the phrase-by-phrase analysis of a short literary or a key portion of a longer text. Tell us about the reading experience pre-structured by built into the text. Is it uses a critical analysis or criticizes analysis to be able to understand what the text means and supposed to be the text want to refer. The third question is, do the sounds or shapes of the words as they appear on the page or how they are spoken by the reader enhance or change the meaning of the word or work? The first answer could be the sounds or shapes of the words in the text makes change. Yes, because when we interpret the meaning of the text, we depend not only on the literal meaning, but also we consider the other words before or after that words. The second answer could be, yes, it appear on the page or how they are spoken by the reader enhance or change the meaning of the word or work, because for me to have a challenge to reader. The fourth question is, how might we interpret literary text to show that the reader's response is or is analogous to the topic of the story? The answer could be, we know that the reader's response has multiple meanings and everyone's interpretation are okay. But the only thing we know the true meaning is to ask the authors itself. Also compare the reader's response to the topic of a story. Or could be answering in other words, that we interpret a literary text to show that the reader's response is or is analogous to the topic of the story, to focus and to read carefully by using our mind to be able to understand and to know the meaning of this poem. We analyzed it by using our knowledge. The fifth question is, what does the body of criticism published about literary text suggest about the critics who interpreted that text and or about the reading experience produced by the text? The first answer could be, we study criticism about a text to analyze the scholars and or the reading experience produced by the text. Second, we know that the reader's response says that literature points toward actual human situations and feelings, and everyone's can be considered. The second answer could be, in other words, that criticism is the practice of judging the merits and faults of something or someone in a sometimes negative, which means the text shows the writer's emotion that shows her love in everything. So we need a criticism. That's my summarized to reader response criticism. Thank you,
you very
sir.
much. Thank you, buddy. Your source was OWL, isn't it? You
Yes,
have
sir.
that's it. Okay. So we become familiar with what reader response is. As you could see, reader's response different from other source of types of literary criticism. Uh, there is an interaction between the reader and the text. So the author is not important here. The author has created whatever he wanted or she wanted from the beginning, and he has posed whatever they wanted to write in their works. Now, the critics in reader response think that if we want to make an understanding of the text, this is the reader who can interfere in the text and make a interaction with the text. So one of the reader's response critics, Wolfgang Iser, the German practitioner, mentions that this is necessary for the readers to be informed when they are dealing with the text. Because when we say that any kind of criticism is allowed, because the readers, no matter who they are, whether they are university scholars, whether they are university students, whether they are practitioners in literary text or whatsoever, it is not important. Maybe a baker, a taxi driver, or a very ordinary person wants to read that literary text, and they are not quite aware of um, about the literary devices or literary rhetorics and these kind of things. So how can they have uh, a correct understanding of the text? This is not important whether they are aware of all these techniques or not. The important thing for reader response criticism is that the communication that is made between the text and the reader. So, pardon me, it is believed that there are some gaps in the text, and the gaps are going to be filled by the knowledge and the passion of the passion and the knowledge of the reader, whoever they are. So while reading the text, they may have some horizon of expectations. This is something that they call it horizon of expectation. They think that what may happen in the next pages. And then when they read them, sometimes they find out that they were right, or sometimes they find out that they were wrong. But it will create some expectations about what is going to take place in the next pages. Another practitioner in this field is Joss, Hans Robert Joss, who is again a German scholar, has a concept which is called, again, horizon of expectation. But horizon of expectation for Joss is different from the way Iser believe in it. He believes that every reader in a specific historical period may have different kind of perceptions from the text. What do we mean by this? I mean, the reader of the 16th century who reads Shakespeare's works, plays, or see Shakespeare's plays, may have different kind of interpretation from the people of the 17th century or 18th century or 19th century, because the Victorian trends and way of thinking is different from the 16th century people or the people of 18th century who dealt with Enlightenment period, the Age of Reason, and the growth of science and empiricism in philosophy. They may have different kind of perceptions from the text. So the people of the modern period or the postmodern period, for sure, may have a different looking into a text. So their expectations will be different. So we have two kind of horizon of expectations. Horizons of expectations by Yoss refers to the specific historical period, and horizon of expectation by Iser refers to the expectations that are grown up out of readers. Actually, in this term and this section, we do not want to study any approaches, literary approaches in detail, because this is something that we should do in understanding literature courses or in literary criticism courses. The reason we did go through, or we are going through these literary theories is that, as it was mentioned before, the book tells us that these theories plays a very important part in giving us, paving a way for us in order to make good literary researches. That's why the questions that were explained here by Fikri Badi was very important. I mean, when we are doing or we are encountering a kind of literary reader's response, literary criticism, what are the questions that we should consider in order to deal with a text? And this will help us later to do a good research from the reader's point of view for our study. If the approach which has been used and selected by us for our research is reader's response, undoubtedly we have to consider this kind of questions for sure. In reader's response, interestingly, give you a few seconds, please. As I was talking about Iser has also he differentiates two kinds of readers. The first is the implied reader. Implied reader refers to the ones who are embodies all those predispositions necessary for a literary work to exercise its effect. The reader that the writer has in mind when writing his or her text, that we expect what the reader is going to percept from the text. So consequently, the implied reader has his or her roots firmly planned in the structure of the text. In other words, the implied reader is the reader implied by the text, one who is predisposed to appreciate the overall effects of the text. Percepting that the reader knows everything and they are quite familiar with all the literary devices and philosophical things, and they have enough knowledge to understand every parts and piece of the text. On the other hand, we have the actual reader. Actual reader is a person who physically picks up the text and reads it. This reader, as opposed to the implied reader, comes to the text shaped by the implied reader. Iser, in this case, affirms the necessity of examining the text in the interpretive process at the same time by acknowledging the actual reader. Iser declares that the validity of an individual reader's response to the text. Very similar to, actual reader is the one, the person, whoever they are, a university professor or a taxi driver, no matter. The one who takes the, for example, Hamlet and reads it, and the interpretations that they may have, and the relationship that they may, the amount of the knowledge that they may gain from their reading, which is the implied reader. Very similar to what Hans Robert Joss believes, Iser disavows the new critical stance that the text has one and only correct meaning. New critics believe that every text only has one meaning, but they believe that no, every text has a meaning that the reader is giving to it. So if we have 10 readers, we may have 10 different kinds of meaning from a same text. If we are 20% in this class, and we may go through one specific literary text, for example, a novel by Charles Dickens, Great Expectations, we may have 20 different kind of expectations and beliefs. For Iser, texts in and of themselves do not possess meaning. The text does not create any meaning by itself. Its meaning comes out from the interaction between the text and the reader, and how the reader imposes his or her ideas, feelings, understandings, knowledge, personality, whatever they have. And in these interactions, they will get the meaning. He calls it contextualized. When a text is contextualized, that is a phenomenological concept whereby the text registers in the reader's consciousness. The reader automatically views the text from his or her personal worldview, the environment that they have grown up, the culture that they are familiar with, the culture that they believe in, their personal beliefs, and these kind of things. So, however, because texts do not tell the reader everything that needs to be known, but a character, a situation, a relationship, or other such textual elements, readers must automatically fill these gaps that I've told you, using their own knowledge base, grounded as it is in the world view. That's why I have talked about the horizon of our expectation. Among the reader response critics, there is a scholar called Norman Holland. Norman Holland was a psychoanalyst himself, and he believed that according to Freud's psychoanalysis and according to psychology, every person, every single person personalize a kind of identity through his or her life's experience. He means that all of us, we all, as general, we personalize a kind of identity through our lives' experiences, transforming it into our own individualized identity theme. He calls it identity theme, which is unique to every person. Even twins who are very similar to each other, they have a different kind of identity theme. Because identity theme refers to one and only person. So it is different. So because this is different, their worldview, their perceptions from the world that they live, the environment that they are living, their beliefs, their ideas, refers to their private world. So when they read a text, they interpreting it through and by their identity theme, which is, of course, is different from the others. So when we are reading a text, and if we want to imply or apply a kind of reader's response, kind of criticism or reader-oriented criticism on it, we have, as it was mentioned here in the presentation by Mr. Fikri Badi, we have to consider some questions. For example, who is the actual reader? Who is the implied reader? Who is the ideal reader? What is the meaning of ideal reader? Ideal reader is a reader that have very much information, complete information about everything that appears in the text. So that they can interpret and understand everything that appears in the text correctly and perfectly. Because when the writer start writing his or her literary text, he percept in their mind, they have a perception about the reader who is going to read their works. And they think that, okay, I'm going to write, for example, to bring this symbol here in my poem because I want to challenge the mind of my reader. And I know that if my reader has this kind of information, they can understand the meaning of this symbol. Or if I use this illusion here, they will know what the illusion is referring to. Or if I'm using a kind of mythological figure, they may know what is the source of that mythological figure. So they have some ideal readers in their minds that they have full information about everything that understand their text perfectly. But actually, this is not the case because all of us may have lacks in some places. That's why Iser very much and Fish and Stanley Fish, another German practitioner in this field. They insist that the readers should be informed readers. They should study no matter what their job is. They should, they have to study and gain some information so that when they read a text, they are able to understand it perfectly and as better as they can. The next question will be, who is the narrator? Who narrates the text? And who is the narratee? Because there is a difference between narrator and narratee. The way the text is being, because we know that in 1970s, a scholar called Gerard Prince helped develop a specific kind of a structuralism known as narratology. The process of analyzing a story using all the elements involved in it, telling such a narrator, voice, style, verb tense, personal pronouns, audience, and so forth. Gerard Prince noted that critics often ask questions about the story's point of view, omniscient point of view, limited point of view, first person point of view, and so on, objective point of view. But nearly and rarely they ask about the person to whom the narrator is speaking. This is called narratee. Usually the narratee is not the actual person reading the text as a reader. Gerard Prince argues that the narratee itself, the narrative itself, that is the story, produces the narratee on its own, by its own. By first observing and then analyzing various signs in the text, such as pronoun reference, direct addresses, such as dear reader, or gender, race, and social class references, and writing style, Gerard Prince believes it is possible not only to identify the narratee, but also to classify stories based on the different kinds of narratees created by the texts themselves. Such narratees may include the real reader, or the person actually reading the book, the virtual reader, the reader to whom the author believes he or she is writing, as I have explained a few minutes ago, and the ideal reader, the one who explicitly and implicitly understands all the nuances, terminology, and structure of the text. So this will become very important, and this will be one of the tasks of the critic who applies reader's response literary criticism to the text. Another question that may pose after knowing that who is the narratee is that to find out from the text what are some gaps that you see in the text. And the next is, can you list several horizons of expectations and show how they change from a particular text's beginning to its conclusion? Or another question, using Yoss's definition of horizon of expectation, as we said, it is about the period, the specific period of time and interpretation in that period. Can we develop first on your own and then with your other classmates an interpretation of a particular text? Another question is that, can you articulate your identity themes as you develop your personal interpretation of a particular text? Or as you interpret this text, can you cite the interpretive community or communities to which you or the reader belongs? Because there is another practitioner in this field called Bleich. Bleich is another German scholar in this field who believes that we have kind of a community, interpretive community, which means that the readers, although they have different kind of identity theme, but they may have similar understanding of the text. For example, because they have similar presuppositions about the text. Consider their religious beliefs, their ideology that they believe in. If they are similar to each other, they may have similar kind of interpretation or understanding of the similar text. Okay. As we could see here, the role of the reader cannot be omitted, yes, and difficult question. How does the interaction of text and reader create meaning? Through the minor questions that I have just read for you. The readers criticize the text, and when they read and analyze this kind of literary piece, they might have an interaction between the reader and the text by filling the gaps so that another meaning was created. It is interesting that when we have this kind of reading of the text, we may read a play, for example, Birthday Party by Harold Pinter. We may read it today and have a specific kind of understanding out of it. And we put this play away and read it 2 years later. We may have different kind of interpretation from that play. If we read it 4 days later, we may have another kind of interpretation. So our interpretations may change every time we read a similar text, because our identity theme, because our understanding of life that we are living may change gradually, because we are not static creatures. We are dynamic. We are moving all the time. In other words, as it is written here in the text, the interaction of text and reader create meaning are done by analyzing the own meaning of the text, not the understanding of the other people. We are analyzing our own perceptions. The reader come into his or her mind the literal meaning of the text, and then was able to understand the text or phrases. What does a phrase by phrase analysis of a short literary text or a key portion of a longer text tells us about the reading experience pre-structured by built into the text? Examining a short literary text, phrase by phrase analysis of a short literary text or a key portion of a larger text tells us about the reading experience is what the content of that text or built into that text. So pieces by piece, we can go on and reading it and analyzing it. So the phrase by phrase analysis of short literary or key points of longer text tells us about the reading experience, pre-structured by built into the text. It is uses critical analysis or criticize analysis to be able to understand what the text means and supposed to be the text we want to refer. So we have an explanation of a text which has been criticized before, and then we put it aside by our own understanding of the same piece of the text and see what are the differences and similarities. And in this way, we can interpret it in a better way. And other types of questions. What does the body of criticism published about the literary text suggest about the critics who interpret that text? Now, the critics, who are the critics? Or critics are ordinary people like you and me, like us. And they, when they criticize a text, they imply their own interpretations, but based on the knowledge that they have about literature, literary devices, literary history, sociology, philosophy, psychology, and by bringing these knowledge into their criticism, they may have specific different kind of interpretations. That's why we trust their interpretation. So when we actually make a comparison between that interpretation with our own interpretation, we try to find out the differences and similarities and gain something out of it. So criticism is the practice of judging the merits and faults of something or someone in a sometimes negative, which means the text shows the writer's emotions, that shows her love in everything. So we need a criticism. Okay, good. Now, now let's go to the next presenter. Who is the next presenter? Sorry, now I had a chance to read your let me tell you something. Yesterday and the day before, when I had class with your Iraqi friends, they also mentioned that they have lots of problem with Dan, and they cannot connect, or when they connect, they do not have the voice, and the connection is always cutting off. And it seems that there is a problem. Either this is because of the internet in Iraq or in Iran, or there is something wrong with the Dan side. And our friends in Iran did not have such a problem, but mostly our friends from Iraq actually objected about this problem. So maybe you are facing with this problem too. Good. Now, who is going to present psychoanalytical literary criticism? Saja Zahir, are you in the class, Saja? Let me see if you are in the class. Um, Okay. Do we have any other presenters today? You see, if we do not have our presentations at time in the correct session, we will be much behind the whole program. Okay, so please prepare yourself for your presentations. For example, Shima, are you ready for presenting Marxist criticism today? Do you have my voice now? Is my voice okay? Okay, okay. Did you heard what I have said about? And I have talked about reader's response for 10 minutes. Did you have my voice? I have explained everything. Okay, good. Now, I was saying that I have explained reader's response criticism in full and added something to Mr. Body presentation. Do we have any other presentations today? Because today we should have 2 other presentations in order to cover the first part of our section and move to the next part, psychoanalytical literature criticism and Marxist criticism. Is there anyone? I think Shima Hassan was nominated for presenting Marxist literature criticism, and Saja Zahir was going to present psychological literature criticism, psychoanalytical literature criticism. Are you ready for presenting your parts? Because as I have said, if you do not do this, if you do not present it at the correct time, we are going to be far behind. Okay? Any reply? Any presentations for today, even from the next week parts? Remember, no, it seems that no one is ready for today, and this is so bad. I wish that um, Okay. Now that you are not ready for that, because we have two other parts apart from literary theories, we have two other parts that must be presented in the class. So if we do not, Mr. Hajizadeh, are you do you mean you have a presentation or you have the voice? If you have a presentation, please let me know so that I can connect your microphone. Do you have the voice or do you have a presentation? So you don't have a presentation. Okay. Shima, are you ready for your presentation today? Shima, do you have my voice? If you have my voice, please answer me. Do you? Okay. Mr. Rajizadeh, what are you going to present for next week? What is the topic for your presentations? Muhammad, Mona, and Taysir? Well, it seems that I have to arrange the presentation style sheet and send it to you. I'm afraid I had a problem, as you know, in the previous week, and I was not actually. I did not have. I was not in Tehran, in Tabriz. I was in Tehran. Didn't have access to my files, and I was not in a very good mood. So I couldn't do anything, and still am. But it seems that I have to arrange the style sheet and send it to you as soon as possible. Actually, I didn't do it myself because I thought that you want to choose the topics according to your preferences. But if we don't do it on time, we will be far behind. Mr. Ali Safa, are you a new student? You have registered lately? Shima, I was asking that do you have a presentation today? If you can hear me. Okay. Okay, Mohammed. Very good. Yes, we are ready for the week 6 next session. Postmodern criticism, new historicism, cultural studies, post-colonial, and feminist criticism. Very good. Very good. But you are only 3 of you. What is the fourth one? Who is going to present the fourth one? Because there is only 3 names in the. Okay. 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 Good. That is good. Remember that we have lots of other parts to be covered. So we have to choose a specific. Okay, now one person presents postmodern criticism, another one new historicism, another one cultural studies, and postcolonial studies, and feminist criticism. And another 4 is left out for the week after next week, for the week 7. So actually week 9. So you can do the other ones. Okay, good. Now, since we have another half an hour of our class, let me start something that actually I wanted to talk about it in the last 2 sessions of our course. But since we do not have our presentations ready today, unfortunately, and also we didn't have any presentation last week, actually we should have 4 presentations, but we only had 1, just like today. And we have lost a great deal of time. Let me start with what is important when you are doing a research and when you are doing writing a dissertation. The first step is choosing your topic. Everything begins with a topic. Because if we do not have a topic, which means what is the area of a study that we are going to work on? What is it that we have decided to work on? What is its limitations? To what extent we are going to work about something or on something? What is the interesting thing that we have chosen to work on? So every research begins with a topic, the subject matter, the thing that we are going to work on. For choosing our topic, the first step is the thinking about it. The stage that we have to start thinking about what we are going to work on. A few strategic questions can help you and guide your thinking. So everything begins with thinking. First, what have you always wondered about? Of course, in the field of literature, literary studies, I mean. Or what have you always wanted to deal with and consider with and try to find out something about it? This can help you to give you some hints for a topic to choose. Second, is there something you discovered during one of your classes that you always promised yourself you would look into further? For example, from your classes in MA or in MBA, when you were going through history of literature or through the course of novel or drama or literary criticism, did anything catches your catched your interest and you thought to yourself, I want to talk about this, I want to investigate about this concept, and I want to find out more about it? For example, maybe one of your instructors or teachers have mentioned something that have drawn your attention to a specific writer, novelist, dramatist, poet, short story writer, and made you to become interested in, for example, the poems of Seamus Heaney. Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet. And you wanted to make an investigation about that poet. I mean this, anything like this, anything in your classes that have popped up to draw your attention, to work on as a topic later, this can be the beginning of thinking about the topic. Third, what area of expertise would you like to be known for at the conclusion of your program? After you have finished with your MA studies and you have become an expert in English literature, do you like to be known as an expertise in, for example, 19th century novel, postmodern novels, the war poetry, Milton's works written in 17th century, metaphysical poets? Which area of literature? Or I'm expert in structuralism. Do you like to be known as a very good person who have lots of qualities and information about the structuralism, or whatsoever? Because if you have such tendencies, it can help you to choose your topic from that specific area. If you're interested in modern drama and you want to be known as an specialist in modern drama, you will choose your topic from modern drama, from, for example, John Osborne and his plays, Whittaker, Harold Pinter, Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, and many others. Number 4, what could or would you speak about the other groups with similar interests present at the conference, or write or publish an article about? Now, when you are taking part in a seminar, for example, in a conference, and you are looking for people who have the same interest with you. For example, once I myself took part in a conference which was devoted to Sylvia Plath's poetry and Sylvia Plath's works in general. So when I wrote an article a paper and it was accepted for presentation, and I went there. It was held in Oxford, one of Oxford's universities. When I went there and presented my paper, the people who were there, they were all interested in Sylvia Plath's works. Or, for example, I took part in another conference which was about 18th century studies. So when you go there, all the people you see and meet there, they are all interested in that specific field. Or another, it was again held in Oxford. Or it was another conference in Turkey, in Ankara. It was about Janet Winterson's works. So you know that when you go there, all the people, all the scholars there, and all the papers are about Janet Winterson. Sometimes they are more general. They talk about different kinds of topics in the conference, but sometimes it is a specific. So when you are going and present your paper, which is about, for example, Samuel Beckett, you may find some other scholars who are interested in Samuel Beckett and your work. So you decide to work on Samuel Beckett's work, plays, novels, and so forth. So if you consider these 4 suggestions to begin thinking about your topics, the topic is something which seems very easy to grasp and very difficult to find. I mean, it is both a concept which is sahl and mumtani. It's easy. It seems apparently it's very easy. Okay, I will choose a topic, is nothing. And it is at the same time is difficult. Okay, what shall I choose? That is a correct selection. In order to do the suggestions as I have just mentioned to you, you have to be inclusive with your thinking. What do I mean by being inclusive? With your thinking, I mean that don't try to eliminate ideas too quickly. Build on your ideas. Whatever comes to your mind, jot them down, write them down somewhere. Do not put them away immediately. Do not say, okay, I want to working on David Mamet, the American postmodernist playwright. No. I haven't read anything of him, so put it away. No, don't put it away. Write it down. Plays written by David Mamet. Poems by Odin. If it comes to your mind, if you think they are interesting in the first place, do not put them away very quickly. Keep them for thinking about them, because you should do a critical thinking before you start doing your research. Build your own ideas and see how many different research projects you can identify. Now, after you have come to an agreement with yourself that I am interested in these specific areas, then start thinking about what research project I can make according to these topics. try not to be overly influenced by others. It's your own research. Do not be overly influenced. Now, I want to work on this poet, and my friend have told me, no, don't work on it because it's difficult. You cannot find anything about it. Leave it. Don't work on it. I will talk about that, Muhammad, later. I am now speaking generally. Yes, first we should choose our literary work, the concept that we are going to work on, and the approach that we are going to apply on that work. Remember that when we are doing a research, we are not explaining or analyzing a text only. We should have an argument in our research. We should have a problem that we want to solve. We should have some questions to pose in order to answer during the course of our research. So if I'm going to choose David Mamet, I'm not going to explain his life. I'm not going to talk about his works only, but I must go further. I have to pose a kind of a question about one or two of his works and plays and try to find out how I can solve the problem that appears to me through my research. So do not be overly influenced by others. For example, you bring a topic to me and I, as your instructor, mentions that, no, don't work on that. It is very difficult. So forget about it. Okay, I want to work on James Joyce novels. No, James Joyce is very difficult. They are very long and very difficult. Put them away. Don't work on them. You see? Or I tell you, go and work on this specific novelist. Go and work on John Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath. Why? Because I like it. I like it. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe you are not interested in John Steinbeck and his novels. Okay, so by this that I've just mentioned, I mean that you should value your preferences. You may get some guidance, you may get some influence from your friends or from your instructor or teachers, but remember, not very much. Do not be under their influence very much, because after all, this is your research. It should be in the domain of your interest, not their interest. Because your friend likes, for example, Sylvia Plath, you want to do a research on Sylvia Plath because your friend likes it. Do you like Sylvia Plath's poetry yourself? Do you like E.E. Cummings' poetry yourself? If you like it, work on it. If you don't touch it. Try and set a realistic goal. This includes the time that you are willing to commit for your research project. Realistic goal. Now, I want to do a research about a writer who I like very much. So I want to cover all his works, all her works. I want to work on Virginia Woolf's all novels. You can't, because we cannot manage for doing a research, because we have limitations. An MA research should be around 100 pages, 120 pages. Not less than 80 pages, not more than 120 pages. This is the standard one. If you want to do a work on all the novels of Sylvia Plath, it comes to 200 pages, 300 pages. For MA project, it is not possible. For PhD, yes, it is possible, but not for MA project. So, and also, we have limited amount of time. I want to graduate and I have to finish my dissertation. Okay, I have 6 months, I have 1 year to complete my dissertation. I do not have 2 or 3 years to work on. So I have to wrap it up. If my topic is so general, too general, I cannot manage to handle it in a specific period of time. After the topic chosen by you, after you have come to the conclusion, okay, and this is my topic, remember that it must interest us. It must be of your interest. If it is not in the domain of your interest, you are not able to do a good research about it because you don't like it. But if you like the subject and topic, you will enjoy it. You will enjoy the process of your research. Second, your topic must promise new information or confirm old information in new ways. Make sure that after you have finished with your work, the topic that you are presenting, it is a new one, because it's promising to give new information in the field. You are not going to repeat other people's findings and researches and repeating them. I'm not going to repeat them. I'm going to create a new ideas. Or I get the old ideas, but put them in a new way, in a fresh way, in a different way. We should have reasonable scope. We should know our limitations, and we should know how far we can go on doing our research. It should be manageable, should be reasonable. Not too short, not too long. And the last point, have key terms that are clearly defined and operationalized. You must use keywords in your title that whoever is going to read your title, they understand what are the works, the literary works that you are going to work on, what concepts you are going to work on in your research, and from what point of view, from what lens, from what, under what literary trend and approach. So the key terms are very important. For example, my work is Daniel Defoe, Daniel Defoe's Moll Flanders. The concepts are matrimony and maternity in Daniel Defoe's small Flanders. From what point of view? For example, new historicist point of view. So we have the key terms. What is my literary work? Small Flanders. Written by Daniel Defoe in 18th century. What concept I'm going to discuss in my research? Matrimony and maternity and motherhood. These are my topics. From what point of view, by what lens? New historicism, which is a approach. So these are called key terms. So you should have clear key terms, operationalized and defined in your and presented in your topic, so that later when you are going to work on, everything is made clear perfectly. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We have reached the end of the class. I have to stop here. Thank you for your participation in the class. Please prepare yourself for the next week presentation, because we will be much behind the schedule if we do not move very quickly. Okay, because the classes are going to finish in 16th of day. I think it is the 3rd of January, something like this. So we have to stick to our schedule and do not fall behind it. And also, I thank Mr. Fikri Badi for his presentation today. Till next week, thank you and goodbye. Take care. Last.